testing.
I'm stuck with the edges. It's called this year. Like halfway through my
It's fine.
so they're it's almost there. It's the first year. I'm not moving. time is 5:30, and I'd like to bring this regular board meeting to order. We will start with the pledge, and then after the pledge, I'd like to ask if anybody would like to have a few moments of silence in remembrance of a student in our community and all of his family and friends. So we'll go ahead and start with the Pledge of Allegiance, and will you lead us in the pledge?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. We will move on to section 2, informational reports and recognitions. Can I get a motion to get that on the table, please? Janie, in a second.
Second.
Phil. Up first, we have the pro officer end of the year report. I'll go ahead and turn it over to Rocky.
Hello, my friend. How are you this evening?
Good.
Good, good. All right. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about this. I hope I'm not real long-winded tonight, but I wanted to come in with a little different approach for you this year. I wanted to talk to you about the pro program specifically. Now, our slogan that you see on the pro emblem says, "Where law enforcement and education meet." And I agree with that. But I like to think of it a little bit more in depth in 3 words. The pro program is a ministry of presence. Let me explain a little bit. There are canons that are within the pro program. And please don't get focused in on just the safety and security of the program. Now, I've always preached to everybody that life is the most important thing that we all have and never will be. But don't get honed in on just the safety and security of the program, though that is one of the canons of the program. But the beauty of the pro program is the prevention part. That's so that you don't ever have to utilize or get to the safety and security portion, which if it ever did, we would have to do, but it's the prevention portion of the program. And that's part of the title, Prevention Resource Officer. The prevention aspect goes into, I wish you could take a walk with us for a couple days in the school system all across the state, but I'm going to talk about Randolph County. The mentoring that we do is unbelievable. The classroom facilitation that we do, the classes we teach, the things that we do, the interaction we have with our youth is incredible. We do counseling. We have a great rapport with the students. That's not just through the school year, but it ends up becoming lifelong. It's where you go into a school, and of course they see an officer with a badge, they see the shiny side of the badge, but this is where they really get to know the dull side of the badge, of who we are. And that reflects on not only just us, but everybody that wears our patch, and whatever shape, size, color, badge across our county, our state, it reflects on them as well. And our youth get to know us personally and what we're like, and hopefully that develops, it changes them to want to become leaders, to go out and turn that into fruition, and become responsible members of society. And we hopefully the program helps, and it should, bring down disciplinary issues, so the principals don't have to deal with as many disciplinary issues. Now, they're going to have to deal with some, but hopefully the program's designed to with that rapport building and that relationship building, to bring down disciplinary issues as well. The resource that we do, we have a career approach with it. We talk to kids about what they kind of careers they want to go into, and try to guide them in with that in connection with their teachers. I'd like to see a lot more want to go into first responders. I'd love to be able to see some of them want to become law enforcement officers, because I'm not always going to do this. And I want to see people out there that have good ethics, good morals, good principles, and good leadership skills to take on these kind of roles so that they can help our communities. Not just serve our communities, but to know that, and you are a part of the community, and to treat people with respect. And then, of course, you have the officer aspect. Now, if we have to follow up on cases, which this year was pretty reactive, had a lot of casework to do, then we have to do that. Whether we have to arrest an adult for crimes against children cases, and I'll get into that in a bit, or it comes to vaping, dab pens, things like that. If we have to do something with that, then we do. But again, the program's designed on the prevention aspect. That's what we like to focus in on. And some of the things that were done this past school year, we worked with Mr. Nick Alford, putting together an emergency response plan for all the schools and a reunification plan. Now, that's put together, but it is not solidified so that everybody in the first responder realm knows that that's what we're supposed to do. Now, there's supposed to be a meeting, trying to get a meeting set up to do that. That's the next step, so that we can solidify that. We've done classroom work. Some of the classes that we've been in are driver's ed, criminal law, current events, law enforcement, physical fitness and agility, youth classes, good decision-making and morals, and now that's directed more toward grade schools, dab pen and vaping issues. One of the big programs that brought back, I think 3 years ago, was the Hunter's Education classes, and man, did those kids love that. Now, we really make that as fun as we possibly can for them, and that thanks to the Natural Resource Police, we're able to bring that into the schools as well. We do as many school visitations as we possibly can. Again, this past year was pretty reactive, so being able to go visit all the schools as much as we'd like to was limited because of all the reactiveness that we had to deal with. But we did get around all the schools. We visited with extracurricular events, proms, graduation, ball games. The trading cards are still going on. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, those are the little baseball trading cards that we've done with the youth, and every year we have a new trading card that comes out. That's for multiple purposes. That's a huge hit. Obviously, a lot of the grade school kids want those. We're finding a lot of high school kids are starting to get them too, but if they collect the whole department, then they get a bigger prize. But there's a reason to collect the whole department, because then if they get to know those officers and those guys on night shift or evening shift go on a call and see one of our kids at school, they get to know them and they know them a little bit better, and hopefully it de-escalates the situation. I've personally been with domestic calls where that has happened, or crimes against children, and they open up to you right there. There's been a lot of cases that I've worked and even haven't worked, but maybe the kids see me and we've been able to bring that case to a closure just off the relationships that we've built. We've been able to do the ball games against the middle schools like we've done the past years. It wasn't a basketball game this past year. It was a soccer game, or a kickball game. Basketball, I'm getting older and I just can't seem to run on court like I used to. So the kickball game was a little more down my alley, and I didn't have any kickback on that. They like that a whole lot. But you know what? The kids love it too. We make that fun. Again, that's rapport building. That's relationship building. The cases that I've worked, all three of us have worked, but I know that I've had several crimes against children cases this past year, and I've made several arrests off those. A couple of them were with convictions, some of them still affiliated with court, but I've been able to help the kids out with those as well. We've done several home visits this year. We've had several overdoses because of the vapes and dab pens. I know Ethan Carr had several of them at Elkins High School. And he's been right there to be able to assist and help them as needed. We've had one situation, I cannot go into detail with this, but everybody knows, I'll just touch on it briefly, where a weapon was brought into a school. And that was dealt with immediately. That was handled, in my humble opinion, very well. Nobody got hurt. It was taken care of, and I know Danny Pennington worked on one from Elkins Middle School from a threat through social media, and he worked very hard on that. Ethan and I jumped in to assist, as well as other officers, and were able to handle that one as well. There's been incidents where we came out after hours and handled situations. If we think that there's a threat, regardless of what somebody may think, if they think, well, this is stupid, nothing's gonna happen, we come out anyway, and we handle it to make sure nothing does happen. We've taught active shooter classes to teachers that hadn't had that. Well, we had, I think it was the first or second year the program was here in Randolph County. We did that for Randolph County school employees. So those that didn't have that, we did another class for those that didn't have it. I want to talk briefly about what the West Virginia Pro program is doing, what we're trying to do. So every year we have a conference. For the past, I think 7 or 8 years it's been in Wheeling. That week-long conference is based on things that officers do within the schools, and to help them, better them for what they take into the schools and provide to the schools and to the youth. Actually, Ethan, Danny, and I, and the sheriff, and the chief deputy went through a leadership course through the University of Charleston this past year. It was awesome. It was so good that a light bulb went off in my head, and I thought, wonder if we can consolidate and the pro program, the West Virginia Pro program, with the University of Charleston and their leadership program. And that is the route that we're going. And I think next year we're going to be able to do that. And that's going to bring a whole lot more for the training for the officers in the state of West Virginia to be able to take to the schools. What we'd like to see, and I know that a lot of the states having these school security officers, but what we'd like to do is see them come in and join us. We're all, and sing from the same hymn book. We all want to provide safety and security for the schools, but again, the pro program goes beyond just that. But we all want to train together, and I think it's important that we all train together so we're all on the same page of what we all do. And if there's any way that I can help and make that happen with the University of Charleston, with the West Virginia Pro program, that is exactly what I'd like to try to get accomplished. They would still have their week-long in-service for law enforcement course for the week, but then maybe go into a certificate program and then a certificate program with academic credits. And if those officers want to continue their education, they can. But we take everything and we put that into what we're doing within the schools to provide future leaders for our communities. Those classes could go anywhere from personal conduct, code of ethics, to cultural differences among the students, because it's always changing. Leadership development components, such as de-escalation. Again, you're in the prevention. We want to be able to de-escalate so nothing happens. So you're in the de-escalation prevention and management, emotional intelligence and leadership, and resilient leadership in crisis situation. Those are just a few of the things I wanted to lay out there to you. Now, I want to talk about 2 of your pro officers that are absolutely outstanding. You have 3 great proactive pro officers here in Randolph County. Ethan and Danny are incredible. I want to tell you a few of the things that they've done. The past years they've won awards. They're not looking for glory. This is just who they are. But when they do good work, when anybody in my region does good work, I want them recognized for it. and I wanna recognize Danny and Ethan, because they do such good work. Danny helped with he helped this past year, he helped a student, give him money for a dance competition in New York, and then he took him on a tour of New York, and he paid for all that out of his pocket. He assisted in a situation where a student brought a weapon to the school. He and Ethan worked aggressively to help get that taken care of, and they did just that. They did an outstanding job. Danny dressed up as the Grinch this past year and went to all 8 grade schools for Christmas. Ethan and I helped how we could, but I think Danny had a little more fun out of that. He assisted in the active shooter training for the Randolph County new school employees. He paid for 5 students at EMS that didn't have the money to go on a tubing trip. He investigated a school shooting threat by means of social media. I mentioned that earlier. He did a great job with that. Actively assisted in implementing an emergency response plan for the schools. I touched base with that with Mr. Alfred. He also assisted in setting up the E3 app for the Randolph County schools. So those were some big things that Danny did. Those are just a few of the things I wanted to mention. Ethan, at homecoming dance, there was a girl that passed out in the courtyard of the school. He provided immediate medical attention and got EMS there on scene for that. He assisted with that situation at Tigers Valley with the weapon at the school. He actively assisted in implementing an emergency response plan as well. He has assisted in with Danny and doing the Grinch for the Randolph County schools. He also helped Danny with that threat, the safety threat by means of social media. He assisted 2 other overdose students at DHS, found out what the drug was and contacted the Mountain Region Task Force to share the information and work to find where the drug came from and to possibly help make an arrest on that. He assisted Danny in another school shooting threat, exceeded search warrants, or can you read my own? Executing search warrants at the residence and finding evidence in the air ducts of the bedroom. He helped with the E3 app for the schools. He helped the students with getting an account set up at a bank where he worked to get checks put in and access his own money. So he helped the student with that. He helped the student contemplating suicide with making the right choices. So again, the PRO program is not just focused on a reactive. It's more based on being proactive and prevention. And the relationships that are built, I can't emphasize how important those are. I mean, these can be life-changing for a lot of the youth. And being able to help them and guide them and direct them and the preventative measures that come along with this program are incredible. That's all I've got.
Any questions from the board?
It was a very good.
And everyone, anybody that I've come in contact with regarding the program is very complimentary. I've never heard anything but compliments, which is incredibly weird. But and I will say too, anytime somebody has brought a concern or they've heard a threat or whatever, if I say the pro officers already know, they've got a plan, everybody, everybody just is like, okay, and then people can feel okay sending their and everybody pitches in to make sure that everybody's safe. But as soon as I say that, then everybody goes from a level 10, down to concerns still, but okay, we got it under control. So I think that speaks volumes. Any questions?
No, just as I've continued to share my pleasure of working with these 3 officers as well as the sheriff and his whole department, that all of local law officials have been excellent to work with in this area, and we're just appreciative that we have these 3 people and understanding that they're going way above and beyond what we traditionally see in the scope of work. And I just want to commend them for their ongoing work and the relationships they're building for our students, with our students and our community. And I just want to say thank you.
and they do know our students, anytime somebody, they're like, oh yeah, I know that kid. I mean, I don't know how you guys do it, but you know all the kids, so, every time. Oh yeah, I know that guy. So, thank you.
Well, thank you.
All right, up next, we have the board self-evaluation, so we've got Dilly to lead that.
Sure, this is part of our, the board's annual requirement to do a self-appraisal. Okay, we've got it up there on there. I just, you guys have the handout, but I've just prepared so our community could see it as well. Broken these down into the questions that they were asked and the responses. Basically, the board members said that they could communicate the county's mission, believe that learning for all, whatever it takes. As you can see, strongly agree and agree. And I'll slow down if you ask me to. So make decisions on board member based on established mission of our county. Strongly agree and agree was the stance. Board members share a commitment to the county's mission. 4 agree and 1 strongly agree. Our board meetings include meaningful discussion about county goals and means of achieving them. Looks like we have 2 that agree, 1 that strongly agrees, and 2 that disagrees. So that's an area that we'll have to look at, see if we can find a way to remedy that and improve some of the elements of the board meetings to see if we can't address those concerns from board members. Number 6, our board expects central office staff to be committed to all students obtaining mastery of state standards. They all agree on that. My commitment as a board member impacts my actions and my expectations for students and staff. Between strongly agree and agree. Our board evaluates the superintendent based on board goals, expectations for student achievement, and compliance with state and local policy. That's agree and strongly agree. Number 9, our board members provide feedback to superintendent when appropriate. It looks like we have 3 that agree, 1 strongly agree, and 1 that disagrees. Again, another area that we can definitely work to remedy. Number 10, our board upholds a clear set of expectations of performance and professional qualities when hiring and evaluating the superintendent. It looks like we have, again, 3 that agree, 1 strongly agrees, and 1 that disagrees. Number 11, as a board member, I have the necessary information to make decisions about issues. 2 that agree, 2 that disagree, and 1 strongly disagrees. So that's an area that we'll definitely have to see if we can't work to improve the information for board members to try to ensure that they have the information to make competent decisions moving forward. Students' performance and well-being can be measured effectively. That's 4 agree and 1 disagrees. 13, our board engages in frequent meaningful conversations about improving student achievement through the district. 4 agree and 1 strongly disagrees. 14, our board has specific measurable goals, frequently monitors progress towards meeting them and makes changes needed. 4 agree and 1 strongly disagrees. Our board operates effectively as a policy-making body. We've got 3 that agree and 2 that disagree. Decisions and actions of the board are grounded in state and local policy as opposed to focusing on management. 4 agree and 1 disagrees. 17, all potential county-wide issues are referred to the superintendent for management. 5 agree. Our board has established a schedule for reviewing policies for relevance and alignment with state policy and West Virginia code. 3 agree, 2 disagree. That's an area we definitely know we need to get caught up on our policy updates. 19, our board behaviors align with established norms and operating procedures. 4 agree, 1 disagrees. Number 20, our board expects the superintendent to serve as the chief executive officer and run the day-to-day operations of the school system. 4 agree, 1 strongly agrees. 21, the relationship between the board and the superintendent is one of mutual respect, open communication, trust, and confidence. 1 agrees, 2 disagrees, and 2 strongly disagrees. Another area that we'll have to work diligently to remedy moving forward. 22, the authority of the board is a corporate body and not as an individual members. 4 agree and 1 disagrees. 23, our board goals are established and communicated to all stakeholders. 4 agree, 1 disagrees. 24, our board has an established process for communicating information with the public. 5 agree with that. Our board meetings effectively allow time for both board business and input from community members. 5 agree. Our board procedures for allowing public comment are fair, clear, and consistent. 5 agree. Board members attend school district and community events throughout the year when possible. 1 strongly agrees, 2 agree, 2 disagrees. When speaking publicly regarding county issues, board members align their statements with the board's official position on the issue. 4 agree and 1 disagrees. And the final question, our board communicates with government leaders, local, state, and national on issues dealing with public education. 1 strongly agrees and 4 disagrees. So just some areas, obviously, we'll have to
You
work.
read that wrong.
Excuse me.
Said 4 agree.
Oh, excuse me, 4 agree, excuse me, I apologize. Trying to get through this pretty quickly. Thank you for the correction. But just, again, some areas I think that as we look into the following year, we can definitely build some goals towards to try to resolve and remedy some of the concerns that the board has showcased in their self-appraisal this evening. So I don't know if you guys want to comment, but I just wanted to do this quickly as part of our requirement to do so.
Any comments from the board? To delegations and public comments, I don't think I need to get this on the table. It's just, it's like, we can just move on to it. We have 1 person that signed up, Mr. Justin Murray, and a delegation individual may make comments to the board. However, the board may not deliberate or take action on any item that is not on the meeting agenda, except in emergency situations. The board may ask only clarifying questions of the individual or delegate, and you get 5 minutes to speak. And Ms. Nolan, would you be willing to do time for me? Okay. And we can pass that.
Good evening. Wow. My name is Justin. I'm representing Explore Randolph County, and I have some questions that I'd like to ask, and I, of course, don't need a response tonight. After the vote by the Board of Education to keep the Harmon School open, there was a community petition started by the athletic director on change.org, stating he had no confidence in the Randolph County Schools Board of Education members. It was brought to our attention that the superintendent emailed staff of the Randolph County Schools stating it would be helpful if they would sign the petition. Certainly don't want to make any assumptions. So I'm hopeful that the superintendent will let us know if he actually sent communication asking staff members to sign the petition. The reason I'm asking the question is, if he had done this, it would be in violation of Randolph County Policy 3210, 3231, 323101, and 3362, which would mean immediate dismissal from his position if he actually did that. So I'm asking the Board of Education members to please continue this investigation, because knowing that your employee, the county superintendent, is trying to undermine his superiors that you're voted on by the public, it would be a major concern for the future of Randolph County schools. Next question. Harmon and Pickens schools were trying to, staff of the Harmon and Pickens schools were trying to make their voice heard publicly that they wanted to keep their schools open. The superintendent reprimanded these staff members, but when the athletic director started the petition, the superintendent told staff members this was freedom of speech. So my question for the superintendent is, can you please help us understand why different staff members were held to a different standard in your school district? Why was some told freedom of speech was only granted? Why was freedom of speech only granted to certain staff members who agreed with his views? Is this legal and ethical? The State of West Virginia Office of Accountability came to Randolph County. You all know about that, late April, May. Of course, this information was made public. During the Board of Education meeting and in the paper, Mr. Dilly commented he was not aware of that, why they were coming to Randolph County. He said, and I quote, "I really know little other than it was scheduled ahead of the vote." That was the RIF vote. In the most recent State of West Virginia Board of Education meeting, the Office of Accountability disclosed that they had been called in to speak to the Board of Education members. Somebody called them in. So my question for Mr. Dilly is, did you call them in? Or are you the one who was feeding information to the Office of Accountability for their assistance in Randolph County? Also, January 8th, Dr. Dilly and his leadership team, according to the paper, withdrew the proposal to close Pickens K through 12. This was after the Board of Education voted 4-1, keep Harmon open. It has since been reported that the decision Since this decision has been reported, you've commented on the financial challenges for Randolph County are due to the Board of Education of closing both schools. So can you please provide clarity that it was your decision not to vote on the closure of Pickens School? It wasn't the Board of Education's responsibility. They didn't make that decision. And last but not least, a question for you, Rachel, I need your help with. It'd be extremely helpful if you could clarify for the public the status of employment during the most recent RIF season. The Office of Accountability, I think it was June 11th, stated that Randolph County School is 4.5 overstaffed for professional student support, 12.06 for professional educator, and 16.57 for total professional personnel. That's a total of 33.13 that they're overstaffed. So my question is, can you help us explain, make it super simple for me, please, to the public as well, where's this process? Because you rescinded the vote, it was you didn't rescind the vote, you rescinded the decisions, and so I was just curious where that was at as well, so, all right? Thank you all.
Thank you. That concludes public delegation. We'll move on to consent calendar. Can I get a motion? By Ms. Norman.
Second.
Second by Phil. A lot of these look like standard things. Any questions for, that you received, Dr. Dilly, or any questions from the board?
I did not receive any questions. We do have Mrs. Rosencrantz here if you have any questions related to the child minister. Yes.
I was gonna, are we still under, as far as we know, now I can't think of the phrase that I'm trying to think of, where students can receive free and reduced, and is that still going to be in effect? I know that there was some question here or there.
I'll defer to Mr. Smith. I think he's received a little bit of an update. I think we're okay for one more year, but after that, that's.
Yes, that was the information that LaDonna had. She actually shared that with us yesterday, I think.
So we're saying
we
for
were-
one more year?
One more year for sure.
But we would encourage folks to reach out to their representatives at the federal level to continue this important program for really the whole United States, not just West Virginia, but.
Does Gordon Food 71 minutes? Do they bid? Yeah, we put. Yeah, so we put it out for a national bid, and they were the only ones that bid. Yeah, like US Foods. It's hard, I mean, even with the milk bid, I put it out to 5 different places, and United Dairy has pretty much taken over the milk bid, and I called the State Department because I put it out for 5 and I only got 1 bid to ask them what to do, but Tony, the executive director, said there just really isn't anybody anymore.
I guess just keep documenting that you tried. That's about the only thing that we, you know what I mean, that we can do.
Mhm.
Tried, right, put it out. Any other concerns, questions for the board?
The Pro Start program, or yours about what's that for? Are they gonna start making this better?
Well, yeah, I think it's going to be one of the many things that they're trying to do. I think part of what they're wanting to do is kind of create so that opportunities for those Pro-Start students to be able to expand to more like food truck and bigger environment things, but I'm sure they're going to benefit from it in other ways too. Let's just be honest about it. But what we will say that because we did vet this through the Department of Ed to make sure that there weren't concerns, and the Faculty Senate did make the vote, and the Faculty Senate funds will be what pays for this, and so we did clearly make sure that everything was above board. But I think they're excited about the opportunities that it will bring to expand some of the opportunities to provide services, I think, as well for them. I'm sure they'll probably potentially use it even for fundraising
I was gonna
mechanisms.
say this could
So,
be a nice way to do fundraising, and as the food service industry has changed, and food trucks and things like that, they can be very lucrative, and, I think we need to move with the times. So, and again, in case anybody's not seeing this is not coming from general funds. This Faculty Senate has been voted on as well too, so.
Do you have, Dr. Dilly, do you have any idea of how many students are in that Pro Start program? I'm kind of
Not
Catching up
offhand,
right
I'd have to go
now.
back and look, but I would say it's probably close to 100. And varies a little bit, because there's, some years heavier than others, but I know it's a very active bunch, I'll put it that way, but I don't know the exact number off the top of my head.
We've had
I apologize for
consistency with
catching
that.
you off guard. I
No,
was just
that's
thinking about
okay.
how many kids.
I wish I could
are
remember that
doing
number. I know that it was presented to us, I think, at one of the previous meetings, but I don't recall the exact number, so.
We've had the same, a lot of it is like, you have the same, you know, instructor, we've had the same instructor there for a while.
Yeah,
And, you know what I mean, that's always helpful for.
build that
to build
program.
So
Sure.
I think he's done that.
I just didn't know where we were at this time.
Any other questions, concerns with consent calendar? All right, we ready for a vote? All right, all those in favor of consent calendar, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes 5-0. Moving on to minutes, agreements, and contracts. Can I get a motion for that? By Phil, a second?
I'll second.
All right. And I did have a question, but then I realized that my email, I didn't have service and it didn't go out. Just some explanation on that Zonar service agreement.
What specifically was your question?
Just like, have we used that,
Yeah, this is a
before?
continuation of
Okay.
existing software.
I didn't remember that Zonar name.
Yeah, it's part of our transportation, services that we,
GPS and stuff.
yeah,
like
tracking the buses and things.
Okay,
Yeah.
I knew that we got that 2 years ago, but I didn't that this was the name, I don't. And I know it's been helpful because there's a lot of dead areas, even just on our regular routes that otherwise they would not be able to call for help or, you know what I mean, or anything like
Right.
that.
Well, and it's helped us even when we're trying to do some planning around times and looking at student routes and different things like that. It provides us accurate drop-off times and those kinds of things. And so it provides a number of services for us. And as we are looking at changes, reorganizing the system, it's going to be invaluable to us as we try to maximize the amount, or not maximize, but shorten the time on buses as much as possible with efficiency. It's a useful tool in that regard.
Any other concerns or questions for section 5 or anything cool?
That sonar does cover the radar or the miles per hour that buses will travel to, correct?
That is my understanding it does.
I didn't know that.
It used to.
I couldn't imagine that being something they'd take away at this point. But that'd be, I mean.
Just wonder if it's still in use.
Right, we ready for a vote for section 5? All right, all those in favor of section 5, minutes, agreements, and contracts, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All right, and any opposed? And that passes 5-0. Moving on to financial. Can I get a motion, please? A second?
Second.
And, all right, were there any questions submitted?
I didn't receive any. I don't know if Mr. Smith received any or not.
Any questions from the board?
The approval for the checks and stuff going out, that starts June.
Some of these are like that, yes. We still had some things in process, see which sections. E is a batch listing that has not been released. So is F. E are ones that we did need to go ahead and get paid.
That's kind of how I was reading it, but I thought it was started.
We wanted to go ahead and get started,
Yeah.
so.
Very good.
So these checks have not, the bulk of these checks have not been released. Foods is one of the ones that, if we do not pay within a certain amount of time, we're gonna lose discounts. We'll have to, also go to an ACH type payment as opposed to the credit card, because they're also charging fees for that. It's a statewide issue. That, like utilities, is something that we would like to continue to be able to pay those. I'll get further clarification from the state. I'll be working closer with them starting next week. But I'll get further clarification, but as of right now, we would like to be able to make those payments. Are they due within 10 days, Madonna?
So would that be a separate voting item with those specific?
That's what we've been doing here, it'll say batch if it's, being held, and then it'll say just accounts payable if we have them. I'll get further clarification as we go. But yes, if it says accounts payable, that means that we have it, but that's typically going to be just utilities, and items that we, vendors that give discounts and so forth. We would not take advantage of. But everything else is, will be approved by you before it is released.
And that's under batch?
Yes. Yep. Did you want me to talk on any of these different areas? That is a walking plan. In lieu of transportation. Parents are driving the children out so far. In lieu of transportation.
And the reason it says warning beside it?
That is likely the account. When we budget to generally the county office location. So then when we spend the money, we spend it based upon a location. So it's going to give her a warning saying that we can budget there. So you'll probably see me doing a lot.
Yeah, that's why I was asking.
It's telling her that that account doesn't have enough money in it. What it does is I'll put $10,000 in 001, which is the county code, and then we'll spend off, 101 is Colton, 102 is Harmon, 103 is Pickens, and it goes down to schools. And what I do is I monitor that $10,000 with all the negatives below it. So that one, the only difference in that code is location. So what I do is I monitor, and that's one of the things the state will have us doing more of, is monitoring each of those sections to make sure as a section, that we're not going to everybody. Does that make sense?
Not really, but okay.
To be able to track our expenses, we code everything we can to location. There are some items that the state child nutrition, for example, when you buy all the milk that they buy, we don't necessarily count every gallon of milk going out to a location. So they have a formula that allows us to do that on like a per student type percentage. Pickens obviously would be a small percentage of the milk that goes out on that bill. And so they do per student on some items. But any time that we have the ability to code the location, such as this, we know where that student is, we know what school to code it to. I don't know it when I'm budgeting, so it would be impossible for me to budget the location. So we just use a top level code with a 001, just a county code, and then we spend the location. And then when I need to run reports, it is actual expenditures at the locations, largely, but there are, our diesel fuel, where should I expense that per school? very difficult to do. So there are items.
You're budgeting in a broad category,
Yes.
but then once we tag it, you're putting it with
Yes.
specific,
Yeah.
with specific schools, so that you know
Yeah.
later when you run the report where it actually needs to.
Yes,
Gotcha.
and I can run a report based on any section of that. I can run it on the 11, the 12791, the 514, and then I can tell, I wanna see just the bottom line of XXX, which is location, it'll pull all those locations and tell me, okay, $10,000, do I have 8,000 left, 2,000, or about 80%? But anytime it sees a location, it's gonna give her a warning that she does see things. For that specific location. Yeah, these read much differently than the others. But it's generally because of the location. I do have, a slight revision on the salary schedule. I do put a separate page there that everyone's, it's the very first page of data in the, attachment. We'd actually missed that. It was, Nick's position that was not listed on there. And, I got that included after the fact. But you have to approve this salary schedule every year. We've taken pieces out of it that were, what was some of the extra duties that we were. Yeah. All of those have been taken out, but those were ripped during RIF season, so we will not have those next year. One particular director position I have is currently vacant. As you decide. There are quite a few budget entries right now. When Mason dropped to halftime and then left, I've been trying to play catch up. So a lot of that happened in May. There'll still be some more budget entries over the next week. Again, I can be written up in my audit if my budget lines are too far out of whack. So I have to keep up with that. You get those generally monthly, some sort of supplements. So you do have quite a few of those. Also, toward the end of the year, the state will often give several small grants out for various different things, maybe summer training for, maybe social studies was training they were giving money out for this year for us to be able to send staff to a conference. They'll send that in the form of a grant. That's not in my original budget, didn't know it was gonna happen, so you'll see me supplement those into the existing budget. So that's what you're approving also tonight. Also have a listing of the school support organizations. We should be doing that every year. We've been doing it for about 5 years now. Just the groups that we authorize to raise money in the name of the school. These groups are, you'll have groups that will raise money for the schools, but they are community type organizations. And they would not fall into this because they raise money for maybe not only the school system, they may raise money for the hospital, local youth, and another type thing, the YMCA, all the different things that they can potentially raise money for. These organizations specifically exist for us. And these are the organizations that we have access to their books. If we need to look over those. If, we have any activity going on that wouldn't be appropriate.
The bigger spaces in
No, not this time. The makerspace, that was a private donation just for, yeah. received the check, and then the next day they sent us an invoice. And then that company, is gathering those materials, being out for our grades.
Yeah, those will say we've actually received those this past week, both at the middle school and the elementary bunch, so I know they're excited, so hopefully before too long, we'll get a chance to maybe invite the board members to see those in action.
I've got a couple, like, either texts or emails from staff that were super excited, that if, so that's, what's this, here's something positive that we were able to do, this to gracious.
I know that was a big scatter shot, anything else specifically you want to talk about?
You said something about, the director of transportation is not on here, correct?
It's not on.
It's not on the sheet that you gave us.
I did do a single sheet, it was on everyone's, it should be.
This one?
Yes, it's on there, but the actual attachment within the meeting should reflect if there was a change to page one. It's an attachment, it's in the agenda.
But it's,
The full book is in the agenda,
it's in the agenda.
or in the, I'm sorry, on the online, I did.
Oh, okay, it's an attachment. Okay, I'm looking at this one.
Yes, this has,
Okay.
service, principal supplements, it has service personnel, OT, PT, technology, speech therapists, it lists our coaching pay, the pay grades that, all of our service personnel fall under state code, 18A, -4-8A. So all of those are in electronic attachment. The public should be ridiculous too. The very first page, I had missed, the transportation operations director position.
Any other questions, financial? And then Brad, just keep us apprised of anything from the state, we usually send that stuff out. All right, we ready for the vote for section 6?
You need to say that page is revised to reflect.
Oh, yes, so, under salary schedule, there was a revision, section B.
To include facilities, maintenance, and school safety.
Include facilities, safety, maintenance. And let the minutes reflect. Section B. Any other? Any opposed? That passes 5-0. 7, personnel. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Bill, second. Second. And a second by Peter. I will say we should probably pull O and do it separate. Because we'll have to go into executive, but we could probably do the slate. Yeah, we could probably do the slate. Any concerns or questions?
There, we do have an item that needs to be
Okay.
pulled, out of section J, employment of service personnel. 3/4 of the way down, Tyler Nichols, custodian 3 at George Ward, that item needs pulled off the agenda.
Pulled completely off.
Yes, he has changed his mind.
So just let the minutes reflect Jay and Tyler Nichols. Okay. I'm a little concerned about Elkins Middle. Are we planning for reposting some of these positions and which ones?
If you want to speak.
We are currently posting and filling, so as people vacate, if they are positions that are required or needed, then we are posting those back. In Elkins Middle School's case specifically, I'm assuming you're referring to the professionals.
Yes.
You're seeing as a resignation or a transfer. The art position has been posted, the social studies teacher was posted. And then English teacher position was posted, the math position was also posted. I think that's it at this point, based off what you see on the agenda. Now, we have had some recent movement after that you'll see on the next agenda, but yes, we have been posting all of those positions. Our applicant pool is very low. Our current status with vacancies in the county is not looking promising. We're reviewing those applications just as they come in, but we're seeing a lot of shifting as a result of some of these resignations. So we're trying to push them, but it's late in the year, so the applicants just they've already been scooped up, basically. So for communities and schools for Harmon, is that because of a resignation?
So is that an addition?
So when I say post and fill, so if somebody resigns or transfers and accepts one of these other positions, we turn right around and post those. So if you'll notice in some of the language, you'll see contingent upon transfer, contingent upon resignation. So we're having a lot of movement. We did post the communities and schools at Harmon, but I spoke with Amy earlier today, and that has been rescinded due to some shift in how those funds are graded, and I don't know if it gets more complicated, I'll let Brad. But that position will not be back there at Harmon next year. So it was filled, that person has accepted another position, and now it will not be filled for next school year.
So the posting that came out today is
Yeah.
obsolete?
Yes,
Okay.
we put it up and then we rescinded it because we found out the funding was not there based on how the title, that they're not eligible for title in Harmon next year, so it's very complicated, and I do not want to speak on behalf of Mrs. Smith, but she asked me to rescind that posting, so we did that shortly after we put it up. Sometimes that happens.
I didn't see the take down, but
Yes.
But that's certainly a position that we're grateful for, that we get funding for, but we don't have the ability to do that. Any other concerns or questions? And I don't know if this will be the superintendent's reports or not, but I assume that there's, along with, within our schools and the board officers in the transition, maybe some type of plan or thoughts about going forward. I don't know if you've thought about that at this point. If not, maybe next meeting, like what your plan, central office. Okay. Yeah. What your thoughts are. Any other concerns? Section 7. Okay, so we are voting on section 7, with the exception of O. We are not voting on O, and we are pulling Tyler Nichols' name on J, employment service personnel. All those in favor of that, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, that passes 5-0. Would it be, I don't know if we can do this, would it be prudent to do superintendent evaluation, or if we go to updates, reports, and school progress, and then go back? Barbara, any suggestions from the board, what they would like
I think that'd be fine doing that way.
to do it?
That way people can
Yeah,
hear the updates and then head out.
okay. So we're gonna hold on O, and then, I will turn it over to superintendent's reports, and then we'll circle back.
Just a few updates this evening, not a whole lot, but just kind of, just trying to make the board aware of some things that are in the process of affecting our budget. And so one of the first things I just wanted to share with you, I mean, normally in a normal year, this would be a good thing. We are actually looking at potentially needing a kindergarten teacher at George Ward and at Midland based on the numbers that we sat down and reviewed the other day. The challenge being that we obviously don't have funding, but we're looking at roughly 18 students at Midland and potentially a full class or a K-1 split at George Ward, and then an aid with that. So ultimately, what I wanted to just share that that will impact the budget that we'll have to try to address, because those are, the Midland situation would actually be a combination of Jennings Randolph students, Midland students, and Beverly students. So we felt like that was just the least impactful, rather than trying to do, we tried to look at transportation options and tried to look and see if there was other solutions prior to addressing the kindergarten. But based on in-district students, we were going to be struck adding both of those positions. George Ward is growing. If you count back, it goes to COVID years when people were at home. So that is part of what we're seeing. So like I said, normally this would be a really good thing, but this is just a challenge we're going to have to overcome financially.
Kind of a good problem,
Yeah, it is.
though.
And-
18 should be, that should pay for salary.
Yeah.
So you mentioning the kindergarten, what about the pre-K?
Pre-K numbers, I think we'll probably, I'll look back here. I haven't seen the final numbers yet, but I know. George Ward seems to be growing the most out of all of our schools right now for whatever reason. So,
He's got a weird thing, and correct me if I'm wrong, we offer them a slot within the county, but it doesn't have to be at their host school. Is that correct? Okay.
Transportation is not a mandated service, and you're not.
We typically do,
But
but,
only if they go out of zone.
and don't if they go, but I mean, if they're in zone and it can be, we
Like
typically
the
always.
6 children that are in fourth ward, if they offer them a spot, we would not provide transportation to a spot.
Do we look at how that's gonna affect our enrollment? Because I've had parents say they've got more than one kid. So if that one kid is sent out of zone to Colton and they got another kid going to George Ward, they're gonna pull both of them out.
well, we try to accommodate them if we can move both to the same school if possible. That's the challenge we're running into, especially in some of these early grades, is we're running out of room. And we had our out of zone meeting the other day, and it was challenging, to say the least, to try to get everybody in the slot. But we do try to do that as best we can with our available situations. But this is where we're, in a normal year, we might be able to add that pre-K position, but with the situation we're in, we just can't. We're doing the absolute minimum, and unfortunately, it looks like potentially 2 aides and 2 kindergarten or K-1 split, depending on what works out the best. We're still trying to determine what those numbers look like. So we're hoping that folks will be a little patient with notifications around our zone request as well. So we're hoping to try to get those out before, in the next couple of weeks if we can.
I know that's, so we. Kids were, even though they were in zone, they were at risk for getting bumped. And I think one time I was saved because I was like, oh my goodness, I've got 3 kids in one school. Like, the last thing I want to do is like have, you know, I mean, the only time I have 3 in one, you know, one school.
Right.
I think with our budget, it's just made it worse, but it's always unfortunately been an issue for us, like weird fluxes in neighborhoods and.
Well, that's sort of what we're looking at Jennings Randolph, where I think we have 8 or 9 students that are over, but it made more sense to add the teacher to Midland because we can transport easier that direction. Plus, it helps us with the out-of-zone requests from Beverly, and then also absorbs, so that allows us to bring the 18 together. So, yeah, it's a little bit of a puzzle, but we're trying to do the best we can for everybody. And then the other part of this, I just wanted to share, just kind of looking ahead, as I think you're aware, and I know that Mr. Smith, I think at a previous meeting, had talked about looking into FY27 with the fact that the situation in the carryover is absolutely gone at this point, that we would be looking at a $3 million deficit facing FY27. I think based on some of the preliminary numbers that we're seeing, we think that that's going to potentially climb to $3.5 or $4 million. So that as we start moving into thoughts about what we need to do moving forward, I think it's going to be in our best interest to target that $4 million deficit number, just to try to ensure that we're meeting the needs of our communities. So one of the things I wanted to do tonight was just kind of throw out a few concepts for you guys to be thinking about. And what I would suggest that we consider doing is at the next meeting, maybe do a work session around some conversations around reorganization, consolidation, what those would look like. But I wanted to go ahead and throw some ideas at you this evening just so that you can see that there are some ideas that I've been listening to some folks, getting some ideas about what might work, might not work. Obviously, there is no plan without negatives. I want to be very upfront about that. But some of these things, I think as we go forward, we're just going to have to weigh out what's positive, what's negative. And so one of those, and probably this is the most aggressive of models, is looking at a 6-school approach in the end. Part of what, when we're looking at that $4 million number, the challenge we're faced with that is probably 3 to 4 schools that would have to be closed next year, going into the FY27 year. And so this model would really reconfigure a lot of things. And so part of what I'm wanting you to do is decide what you think would work the best, and that way we can kind of determine the pathway to get to these long term. And so what this would actually be doing would be turning Elkins High School into Elkins Middle High School and supporting 7th through 12th grade, supporting roughly a little over 1,100 students. These numbers are based on this year's June numbers, which is what I gave you a copy of there so you could have those just in case. So I do anticipate these numbers will be a little lower than this. We would be looking at potentially doing 2 elementary schools in the Elkins area, Midland Elementary pre-K to 2nd grade, and a third ward pre-K to 2nd grade to absorb the surrounding schools into those areas. And then instead of Elkins Middle School, would be Elkins Intermediate School, looking at 3 through 6th grade. Some of the downside to the 3 through 6th grade is you're separating some of the 3rd grade Success Act elements, and this is something that Ms. Smith has shared as a concern with hers. But this would also support some of the stuff that we've shared similarly with George Ward pre-K to 4, moving that 5th grade on to Tigris Valley to help bring their numbers up as well. I think it's important to note that as we kind of think through this, we'll have to look at what we're thinking for the next 10 years or so, because if you'll recall the projections that I shared surrounding the Tigris Valley area, as early as 2035, we could look at a pre-K to 12 building down there, or another consideration there. So that is something that we'll have to look at. Another consideration or concept that you could consider looking at is a similar approach, but 7-school approach, which addresses the 3rd grade concern. As you can see, those are kindergarten through 3rd grade buildings at Midland and 3rd Ward, with Jennings Randolph becoming a pre-K building, which would support about 150 students. And so all of the students in the whole county pre-K would be located in one building. There's advantages and disadvantages. One of the advantages that we have with this is the fact that we have the same grade levels in a lot of the same buildings, so you have 4 and 5 colleagues or more, depending on which configuration that you're looking at moving forward. Again, this is very similar other than just changing the elementary schools. Another concept, again, is looking at moving to 1 high school and actually just turning Tigris Valley area in there. I don't want to be hung on this one, but again, I do have to lay it out there as a concept or an idea, and then the possibility of us looking at building 2 consolidated elementary schools in the future like we discussed in the 5-year plan. So these are just some ideas that I wanted to kind of float to get you guys to start thinking about what you might be willing to support as we try to balance the budget moving forward. Again, I don't think you saw on here, Harmon and Pickens obviously are some considerations in all of these models. They would be consolidated in with Colton and a variety of others. Is there ways that we can think about that? I think those are things that we would have to discuss and see what options we might have available. I think the most viable option moving forward with our financial situation is looking at a virtual school option with a facilitator at those locations. Those are things that we can continue to consider moving forward. Because one of the things I think we'll have to consider is, because I have been approached by some community members about wanting to do these consolidated schools, but then I've also been approached about wanting the committee to start surrounding a levy call. So I don't know that either are going to have a lot of support, but I don't know it either without trying. So the question would be, what do we want to spend our energy and time on as far as what you all would recommend? Because I wanted to also make sure that we had options where that we weren't depending on those additional tax dollars to support a consolidation effort moving forward. So I really just wanted to share these tonight as concepts, and that's all they are, just to get you thinking a little differently about potentially how we reconfigure, rethink some things in long term, because a lot of the decisions we're going to be making moving forward and have to develop the plan for is going to be challenging. We're going to have to move pretty quickly, because one of the primary concerns I have with any of these approaches is the process that requires the development of those impact documents and the hearings that were required.
It's literally every school will be affected.
Well, and the concern I have is capacity in the central office, obviously with the notable transitions that we're talking about, as well as just the requirements, because those other documents was probably several hundred hours between the combined efforts of all of our team. Now, obviously, it would be a little bit more efficient because that was our first go-around on all those, but those impact documents are pretty extensive, and then those would have to be currently under, now, again, if you'll recall, the state gave us a waiver of time. I think we'd have to look at pursuing that again, but without the waiver, we would have to have that information and hearings complete by about mid-November. Which is a-
waiver.
Yeah, and so, I think so too. I'm concerned about that. And so that would not, for people that are listening, that is not next year, that would be the following year. Next year is not, we can't do anything to change, next year's configuration. We'll be looking into the subsequent following year, years after, is what we were talking about.
What would be helpful when we do have a work session with this, and it kind of, when you said, you know, had some concerns because of splitting up the third grade Success Act, that wasn't something that popped into my head. If we can have some of the pros and cons that come up from either your, like, the principals and or the central office, that's not something that popped into my head. I kind of like the whole pre-K in one building, but then I know that LaDonna's mentioned you have to have so much space in the bathrooms and the weird, and not bad, but just weirdness that goes on with that. Are we gonna be incurring a cost to fit those rooms in, you know, special ed? What are we looking, cause, you know, if you're, the dynamics of like, you know, fitting special ed needs into those buildings with that shifting population. So anyway, things like that we might not think of, like pros and cons, like just start listing them out with some of these scenarios, I think would be helpful for us, cause the third grade Success Act was not one that popped into my head.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right about the bathrooms and things, but part of that, what we would, if we were to do something like the Jennings Randolph pre-K building, we would probably pursue support from the SBA to help embed those bathrooms and some of those requirements to make those adjustments to that facility. And those are the things that we would have to identify as we develop the concept of what we want to produce as far as a reconfiguration or consolidation effort moving forward.
And also, like, I was just thinking, by doing this, you know, I would like to see, I know we had talked about over the fall, the building efficiencies that we have right now, like how efficient are our buildings? What buildings need new roofs? Which ones need
Okay.
updated bathrooms? Which ones, so, you know, going forward, that's gonna,
It doesn't make sense if we've got a
yeah,
building that's really falling, you know, that's really struggling.
we've gotta put a lot of money into something like, I mean, this is just off the top of my head, you know, we just put that HVAC system in Jennings Randolph. We know that that's fairly new and should be updated, as opposed to maybe North doesn't have one that's updated. So if we had that information, that would be much helpful.
Okay,
Much helpful.
we can definitely try to get some of these items prepared.
Sorry, that's
One of
just
the
me.
things that I wanted to share too, just especially if you look at the sixth school approach, the numbers that you're looking at for like the high school, that puts us up in that 95% or higher utilization, because when I was teaching there clear back in 2000, there was about 1,100 students at Elkins High School, 9 to 12. But so would there be a lot of dynamics and things that would have to be figured out and sorted out? Absolutely, but that's part of why we need to have this conversation now, so that we can really start thinking through, like you said, the buildings that we want to invest resources into, and then determine the pros and cons of each of those.
Yeah, so I think that would be helpful. for that
Okay,
work
we'll
session
definitely
with
work
you.
on that.
So, you know, and pros and cons, and not that it's, you know, not shy away from them too, to, you know, let's get out, talk about the, you know what I mean, that, oh, this would require SBA money to retrofit those rooms for for pre-K, and what are our chances for that? If you vote, yes, we're gonna do this, then the SBA doesn't come through.
Yeah, that's why I think we always have to have a contingency plan sort of in place to try
I
to.
don't think we can bet on SBA money, especially now that we're competing with charter and, within the state, and, I don't think we can bet on whether the bond money either, that we don't have, and so anyways, that's just my opinion.
Okay, well, then we'll set up at least a preliminary work session, or at least a starting point at the next board meeting at July 1st, and then That way we can kind of start playing around with these concepts. I just kind of wanted to plant some seeds with you
Yeah.
this evening, because I don't know that everybody's even thought about some of these models of reconfiguration, but I've been kind of looking around.
Students, like.
There's not an easy
things with-
solution, because our
no.
buildings, there's not enough classrooms in a lot of our buildings, and
There's
that's,
no great solution, and at this
Yeah.
point, we truly, I mean, we are just doing things to make, with
Well,
budgetary,
yeah.
budgetary reasons, so that we can at least provide a decent.
kind of find a couple steps that we can implement one of these models, but then again, hoping to try to minimize the impact to students as far as having to move multiple times over the next couple of years. That's one of the goals I would have, hopefully, that we would try to do. Yeah, so,
I think everybody's gonna be affected, but if they could be affected once and done.
no, that's my hope, yes. So, and that's all I have for this evening on updates.
Okay, yeah, nothing on B for tonight.
No, nothing will be this evening.
All right, so everybody can see our future meetings there, and then we'll come up with a work session after the first, is that
Well, I thought we could do at least a preliminary conversation on
okay.
the first. So,
on,
and
on
then,
the first?
yeah, I thought, well, because part of what we want to do is get a little bit of a better narrowing of options, if that makes sense to you
So we
guys.
just add that on to the first.
Yes,
meeting.
yeah, that's what I'm thinking as a, that gets,
During the meeting?
yeah, during the
Maybe.
meeting, yeah. I
Okay.
think we can just have some conversations like we're having right now. Just, because part of what I don't want to do is waste a bunch of time, and it's not something you guys want to support. So,
Right.
that's what I want to try to get a little narrower of
Yeah.
view of what you're willing to
I
think
like
about.
that in terms of transparency too.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, just lay it out on the table, this is what we have to do, 3,500,000.
I mean, I wish it was different. I wish I was dealt a different, I wish we were all dealt a different, stack of cards, but.
I wish our unfunded mandates were funded, because then we wouldn't be having these conversations. But the
Right.
legislature has to help us with that.
I wish that, I mean, I know that we got a teeny bit of help as far as, rural schools, and, but nobody really recognizes, Randolph and Pocahontas, and, some of us that, are in severe, rural areas with weird pockets of population, and I know Pocahontas is definitely, when I talk to some of their folks, they're looking at, and I can't even figure out how they consolidate anymore.
Well, and I just wanted to share, I did, I was at a meeting in Wesleyan on Sunday with a number of the House Education folks, as well as a number of legislators there. Some of them indicated that there is some positive discussions happening around national forest funds at the federal level, so that we're going to continue to try to help support that. And whether that'll translate into anything, I'm hopeful, but that's another tremendous loss, that we've seen a significant cut in that budget, so we're hopeful that maybe our legislators, but we would encourage folks at the local level to reach out to those senators and representatives at the Congress to help us support that need.
All right, so that includes concludes superintendent reports. So I will entertain a motion to go into executive, to discuss superintendent evaluation, section O.
To read off the card, like why we need to go into executive session.
Yeah,
It has to do with,
personnel.
personnel, right?
Yeah.
Executive session 6-9A 4B2A, section A.
And can I have a second? Okay, by Jamie. All right. The time is now 6:48, and this board is in executive session. motion to come out of executive session? So moved. By Janie in a second.
Second.
All right. And all those in favor of coming out of executive? Aye. Okay, it is 8:47 and we are now out of executive session. While in executive session, we did do the superintendent's evaluation. The Randolph County Board of Education has completed the superintendent's annual evaluation in accordance with policy 1240 and West Virginia Board of Ed policy 5309. The evaluation reviewed performance on 3 established goals for the 2024 or for the 24-25 school year: stakeholder communication, organizational efficiency, and academic readiness. Evidence presented demonstrated substantial progress across all areas. The board affirms its commitment to supporting continued collaboration and high standards in district leadership. And that concludes O on personnel. At this point, we can move on to future meetings. You guys can read those on 7/1. We will be expecting maybe some open dialogue regarding future plans for our school system. If you get any more feedback from the state, let us know as far as like timelines and things that we need to be meeting at certain times. And then it was also brought up, I don't know if it needs to be an exact agenda item, for these policies, if we can have them come, we need them updated. We need them to come out at a palatable rate.
Yes, we're working on a plan for that, but the first one I want to get out to you guys is the communication with the cell phone
Okay,
policy, because we have to get that
that
taken care of.
one, yes.
But I want to get some principal feedback before, so we'll probably go ahead and put it out for discussion and then try to get the principal feedback on
Okay.
some of that.
Just sometimes 40 is too,
Yeah,
is
well,
too
I
much.
I agree, we were trying to get caught up.
And most of it is just minor verbiage, but in
Yeah.
case there's not, and we found one word changed the whole thing and
Well, the next update corrected that, but, so.
not before the news got a hold of it, so.
I know.
Real quick though, there are policies on the website currently, are those are currently out for 30-day comment, or?
No, there shouldn't be anything active out there right now, I'll have to check, maybe they just hadn't been withdrawn.
Maybe I looked in the wrong spot.
Well, maybe we just didn't get them taken down with all the
Okay, I
transition
didn't-
and all that stuff.
Not a
But
problem, I
yeah.
didn't read
We haven't
them.
added anything new, I'll put it that way.
Okay, I didn't
Yes.
read what was there, but I saw them, and I was like,
No, because I agree, we're trying to look at, can we break them down to like 10 at a time? But I know the cell phone policy is the piece that we have to jump on right away, so.
Yes, and we need clear message for our parents and students too before school, but obviously our administrators feedback too. All right, anything else for the betterment of the board or for next meeting or anything like that you guys can think of? All right, I'll take motion for adjournment.
so moved.
All right, by Sherry, second. By Janie. All those in favor of adjournment, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All right, it is 8:50 and this meeting is adjourned.